Okay, today class we will be going over long division with decimals. And so we know from our previous long division video that our steps to dividing is divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat. And so we are going to go over number 1. And number 1 says 1 in 69 hundredths divided by 1. Okay, we do not have a decimal in the divisor, but we do have a decimal in the dividend. When there's a decimal in the dividend, all you simply have to do is just bring the decimal up above where it is. So that's the only thing different if that's the only place there's a decimal in. If it's just in the dividend, just bring it up and then you proceed to divide as usual. So I know 1, I can make one group of 1 out of 1. So I put my 1 above here. That's my first step, divide. Remember, you can put a multiplication sign here if that helps you to remember to multiply as the next step. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. And then I bring down my next number, which is a 6. I can make that into a box and bring down my divisor, which never changes throughout the problem. Now I'm going to say how many groups of 1 can I make out of 6? 6. So I put my 6 above the 6. 6 times 1 is 6. I know I'm going over this problem, but I'm running out of room. 6 minus 6 is 0, and then bring down the 9. And I bring it right next to my answer where I subtracted always. Anytime you bring down a number, you always bring it down right beside your answer that you got after you subtracted. And so how many groups of 1 can I make out of 9? 9, because I know 1 times 9 is 9. So I'm going to do the next steps, multiply, subtract, bring down. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 minus 9 is 0, and I don't have anything to bring down. So remember, I asked myself those questions. Do I have a number above every number in the box? Yes, there's a 1 above the 1, a 6 above the 6, and a 9 above the 9. I know I wrote kind of big, but it's kind of hard to write on the screen. So the 9 should be right above the 9. And is my remainder smaller than my divisor? My remainder is 0, and it is smaller than the 1. So now my next step is to check the problem. So if I check the problem, I multiply my quotient, which is 1 in 69 hundredths, times my divisor, which is 1, and I should get the number inside the box. And as you can see, I checked it here, and I did get the exact same number as the dividend, so I know my problem is right. Remember to put your decimal in the problem. You count to see how many numbers are to the right of the decimal. And to the right of the decimal in the problem, there are only 2 numbers to the right. So I should have 2 numbers to the right of my decimal in my answer. And as you can see, I will start at the end and I will count 1, 2, and then put my decimal in between the 1 and the 6. Okay, so now we're going to look at number 4, and it changes up a little bit. There is a decimal inside the divisor. Anytime there's a decimal in your divisor, you cannot divide until you move the decimal out of your divisor. And how you do that is by moving your decimal to the end of that number. So if I want to move my decimal to the end of 0 and 2/10, I would just have to move it how many times? Just 1 time. And it would go right behind the 2. But anytime you move a decimal in the divisor, you have to move it that same amount in the dividend. So I moved it 1 time here. I have to move it 1 time here. So if I move it 1 time in the dividend, it's going to go at the end of the 1, and then I just bring it up. So again, let's repeat that quickly. You cannot divide unless there is not a decimal in the divisor. In number 4, I have a decimal because my divisor is 0 and 2/10. I have to move that out of the divisor. And what I do is just always move that decimal to the end of the divisor. So I moved it to the end. I only had to move it 1 time. And so if I look over here to the dividend, then I'm going to have to move it 1 time here. So just remember, however many times I move the decimal in the divisor, I must move it that same amount of times in the dividend. And once I move it in the dividend, then I just simply bring it up just like I did in number 1. And then I can proceed to divide. Okay, so I've moved it over here the same way I did over here, so we can go ahead and divide. How many times can 2 go into 1? Or how many groups of 2 can I make out of 1? None, because I don't have enough of, if I have 1 to make a group of 2. So I'm going to put a 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 1 minus 0 is 1. And then I bring down my 2. So I follow the steps. My divisor always stays the same. It's 2. So now I'm going to say how many groups of 2 can I make out of 12? This is my new dividend. I'm no longer looking up here in the box here. I'm going to look down here. How many groups of 2 can I make out of 12? Well, if I know my facts, that's 6. 6 goes above the 2. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 minus 12 is 0. And then I bring down my next number, which is a 1. I can make that a division box, bring down my divisor that never changes. Now I'm going to say how many groups of 2 can I make out of 1? Well, I did that already. I know that's 0. So I'm going to put a 0 above the 1. 0 times 2 is 0. 1 minus 0 is 1. And I don't have a number to bring down, so my remainder is 1. So I would write R1 at the top. So my answer is 60, remainder 1. So if I ask myself the questions, I do have a number above every number in the box. And my remainder is smaller than my divisor because 1 is smaller than 2. So now all I have to do is check the problem. Okay, again, and so my answer is 60, remainder 1. So I'm going to check my problem. When I check my problem, I use my quotient, which is 60 times, I'm going with the original divisor, which is 0 and 2/10. When I check my problem, I'll go back to the original one. And then that's 60 times 0 and 2/10. And if I multiply those together, I'm going to do 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 6 is 12. I put my 0 as a placeholder before I go to the second number at the bottom. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 6 is 0. Add those together, I get 120. Now what I do, I'm ignoring the decimal place right now. I have to add in my remainder, which was 1. So I add in my remainder, and I get 121. And at the very end, after I've added in my remainder, now I'm going to place my decimal between the 2 and the 1, because in my problem, I only have one number to the right of the decimal, and that is a 2. I don't have any decimals in the top number, so I need one number to the right of the decimal in my answer, and I check to see if my dividend and my answer is correct, and if they're the same, then I know I worked my problem correctly, and they are. I got 12 and 1/10, and this is 12 and 1/10. And that's how you do your long division with decimals. So for homework, I want you to complete problems 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are the problems that I have circled. So these are the only problems that I want you to do for homework. These 4 problems, 5, 6, 7, and 8. If you have any problems or any questions, remember, write them down and we'll talk about them in the morning. You can always rewind this video and go back step by step and make sure you move your decimal out of the divisor before you can divide, and however many times you move it in the divisor, you have to move it that many times in the dividend. Make sure you check your answers. You have to show me where you checked all 4 of these problems. And when you check, make sure you don't add the decimal back in your problem until you're done at the very end. So if you happen to have a remainder, add that in before you put your decimal place in your answer. Okay, kids, good luck on your homework, and I will see you in the morning.